Please, whether it's fire workers trying to organize a union or put poison in our rivers or avoid paying taxes like everybody else has to do.
Well, there was Barack Obama in full flourish last night after his wife Michelle brought down the House with hope and change. Sounded like 2008 all over again on day 2 of the Democratic National Convention. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm Randy Tobler. Stephanie Bell's there, producer Hannah there, and John Marsh. And boy, I was glued to the TV. Weren't you all till 10:30, 11? How late was it?
No.
Boy, Michelle had the wagging finger going on, didn't she?
Oh,
she was scolding us all.
And he was Preacher Obama. You'd have thought it was Sunday morning, go to church. I'm telling you, he was in full splendor there.
And it was so ironic because the whole, her whole deal with Trump was just, white rich man bad instead of orange man bad. But the Obamas are rich. Right? They've made millions and millions and millions of dollars. And so they're trying to talk to the working people. And, I saw people post, I guess she gave some speech last year and earned some insane amount for a single hour speech. I mean, these are rich, wealthy, privileged people.
I mean, look at their property on Martha's Vineyard there. My gosh, they own one of the most...
About half of Hawaii.
Yeah, and so, I don't begrudge them that. That's the point.
Yeah, but they're pointing the finger at Trump.
That's my point. I mean, I'm not trying to say that they should be diminished, but how ironic and how hypocritical of them. So we'll have to see where it goes. I mean, it was not unexpected. More circus going on outside the DNC with clashes, physical clashes between police officers and basically there were Palestinian pro-Gaza protesters trying to assault the Israeli consulate. And there was, they were trying to protect that, the police officers. And so it was, it was a lot more vigorous, I think, than night one in terms of what was going on outside the event. Tonight, we'll have to see what happens, whether that escalates, whether it settles down or not. And, of course, tomorrow, everyone waits for the big speech with Kamala. They had their roll call vote. That was wasted time. I mean, they'd already made the decision on a virtual roll call, didn't they? I mean, a couple weeks ago to formalize the whole deal. Meanwhile, big news, big news on the front of the RFK campaign. And I don't know whether Nicole Shanahan, that is RFK's running mate, talked with him about that or not. But she just as much said that she's ready to fold their cards and throw in with Trump because they seem to be stealing more people from Trump. Here's a little bit of that.
My gut tells me right now is that we just have to keep being honest. I got to just keep being honest. I got to keep focusing on what matters the most outside of party lines.
So she seems to be ideological. They're philosophical, waxing for a little while. And the host of the podcast that she was on, I think he was leaning in, not sure where she's going with this. And then this came out.
There's two options that we're looking at. And one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Walt's presidency.
So what does that tell you? I mean, it tells me that they're ready to throw in, and they are bitter. They are angry at the Democrats trying to shut them out and keep them off of the ballot.
To prevent us from being able to have ballot access.
I mean, she's hopping mad.
I mean, they've been working hard. They've barely been able to campaign because it's all they're doing is ballot access. But certainly if you realize that you're the spoiler and you care about the country, then, I would hope that they would make a change. And it sounds like folks even it's weird coming from her and not from him.
You wonder if there was a conversation or not, if she went rogue.
I know. But I think we're going to hear more from them in the next week. And I hope, certainly I think they would have internal polling that would kind of tell them what's up. And if you don't have a path to victory, I mean, look at some of our races in Missouri this year, how wacky they were.
And she echoed what you said in terms of where their money, it's now being reported that the spending is on legal issues and trying to stay on the ballot as opposed to campaigning. When she made this comment, there was a big fundraiser by one of their supporters, and he has pulled back on that. But you know what? I actually think that I sort of admire that. I admire her honesty. If she was just out there saying, look, I'm looking at the reality of the situation. We don't want the people that rejected us, that denigrated our whole campaign, disrespected us. We don't want them to win. I mean, what does that tell? In a way, I admire that. Now, maybe RFK is not happy about that, but if he's really the rogue outsider, if he were smart, he'd come out and say, you know what? She's right. This thing's rigged against you, and we're starting a third party today. We're not going to be on the ballot this year. We're starting for 2028. That would be some effective campaigning.
I think so. And I liked her comment about we have to be honest.
Yes.
Honest with you, honest with ourselves.
Yes.
And I think...
How refreshing.
Yeah, we could use more of that.
All right.
It was interesting to see what the polls said. What were the polls talking about for RFK's campaign? Maybe play a 5% spoiler on a good day. But
Jill Stein made the difference in 2016. Made the difference. And I think,
what was the separation in Georgia? It was like 11,000 votes. It was so tiny. And there were a couple of other states that were just...
Yeah, so I think it's a big deal. And there's other stuff going on. Of course, we have a new program. I didn't know about this, a new summer food aid program for children in Missouri. I think that'll be interesting. We've got, this is interesting. Now, your kids, when do they start school at Southern Boone?
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. I understand there's an emergency alert app that is going to be available in the Missouri schools. I didn't know about this. We'll be reporting on that as well.
Do you know what I don't need?
Zack?
More texts and emails from the school.
Are you getting inundated with text and emails?
And apps and reminders and sports things. And yes, the parents in their cars right now are like, absolutely yes. If we could just centralize all of this. And I have 3 kids. And at one point they were at 3 different schools. So yeah, I think at some point it got to be like 20 different things, like messages a day. And I stopped reading them.
There isn't like a central repository where it's all just like all aggregated in one spot?
No.
You, the parent, that's the central repository.
Yeah, well, and think about it. You get stuff from the school, and then you get stuff from the teacher, and maybe from like a specialist or somebody else, and then from about the sports things, and then the other. Yeah, it's.
So when I was a kid,
they brought notes home.
The teacher would give us a little piece of paper with notes.
We get that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to manage the paper too.
Then you manage to lose it between school and home.
If it ever makes it home, yeah. That's for sure. And then
you guys are making the whole parenting thing sound super fun.
The chances, even if it comes home, the chances that it finds its way back is a lot. I saw KOMU, I think, did an article this week about managing back to school stress. You can hear I'm stressed. I think we have open house tonight, but there's a lot that goes into managing school schedules.
Now, do you have to do the thing with your kids a couple weeks before school starts where you start making them have a bedtime again and you slowly kind of start pushing it up to where it would be for school so they're not...
We started that this week.
There you go.
Back into discipline, a little structure.
Yeah, it's always
a
rough
challenge.
It's a rough transition, and I think too, they just get so worn out that first week of school, so it kind of naturally regulates them. But we're trying. I don't want to be the jerk for the teachers and have like a really tired, cranky kid in class. That's not fair to the teacher. So I'm doing my best.
You know what my favorite first day of school online trend is, and this has been happening the last few years.
Okay.
When parents take a photo, you have the dressed up, super cutesy first day of school photo that you take before school, and then some parents take a photo of what their kid comes home looking like. I've seen parents do this for picture day too, but especially little kids, they just play hard, and maybe they don't fully understand the concept of keeping their clothes clean or their hair tidy.
So that side by side's interesting.
Yeah, they look really cute when you drop them off, and then they look like they've had a really rough day when you pick them up.
Oh yeah, and it's beyond food. I'm like, girls, did we do some sort of craft project? Because something is in our hair, and it's like glue or glitter, and they come home, tennis shoes. You're like, what did you, just wrecked their entire outfit wrecked. But that's what it's about.
I've had several comments and requests because on a morning show, many morning shows play the Star Spangled Banner at some point in the morning, and I thought it would be a good idea, maybe if we just piloted the Star Spangled Banner in this first segment, because it is a patriotic time. I get very patriotic when it is an election cycle, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of our listeners will remember back in the day when we went around to various grade school classrooms and had them record had them come to the station, record the pledge.
And I was inspired, and I've been sort of sitting on it, and I thought, I don't know, that's sort of, everyone plays it. We want to be a little different. We want to be better. But then I was inspired last night at the Democrat National Convention, and I just think, based on what I heard last night, we ought to launch the inaugural version of the Star Spangled Banner and maybe play it over and over again.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed?
What on earth?
The twilight's last gleaming, whose broad strides.
Ladies
Are
and
they
gentlemen,
using a backing track or?
It said the Women's Caucus.
Oh.
I don't know. This was opening day 2.
Somebody's earpiece wasn't working or something. That's unfortunate.
Where's Scott Fawn karaoke when you need him, Hannah?
I think he did a much better job.
Roseanne Barr.
So, what do you think? I think it ought to be a.
We're not. No, that's. Let's vote no right now. Do I have a veto? Because
I think you get
veto.
that.
I'm pretty sure if we tried really hard, we could do better than that.
And they didn't know the words. They got lost. I mean, it was just embarrassing.
Well, I just wonder. That's why I wonder if an earpiece was messed up, or
But
like you're
even
getting
if you-
feedback.
Even if your earpiece was messed up and your timing was messed up, you should still know the words.
Well, yeah.
And if you watch it on the video, I saw this on Twitter. You watch it. There's an older black lady there. So there's a black woman and a white woman standing at the podium, and it says Women's Caucus. And then there's another woman, looks a little older, and she's just sort of looking away like, what is this?
This is going very bad. I also saw, Hannah, after our conversation yesterday, I saw like Chuck Schumer. He came out to the podium.
Like he was on a game show.
He was doing some sort of weird dance. And I'm like, we should put him and that Australian breakdancing lady in a competition because his moves, I mean, she got 0 points. He should have gotten like negative points yesterday for whatever that was.
I will see if I can get that up on the Wake Up Facebook page.
It was weird.
And there's been a lot of fun made over this. They did a thing where they put together, is that The Voice or America's Got Talent?
I think is that X Factor? Which one is
X Factor.
Simon Cowell on now?
Simon Cowell. See rundown.
Interesting. Michelle Obama on stage last night. She spent most of the time actually just hating on Trump rather than lifting up Kamala, which I thought was real interesting. John?
Well, I agree. You know, it was just one of those deals. It was almost like kind of a, gosh, I don't know, the general feel of her and Barack was apologizing for the Trump administration almost. You want another 4 more years of this? People are like, well, we had 8 years of you.
Yeah, I did like Barack's line. I did think it was clever in that he said the sequel is usually worse than the original.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Whoever wrote that, I don't think it was him. It was pretty good. Well, yesterday, whenever I talk to folks around the nation, they always kind of lament, like, Missouri's primaries are so late. Why is there a primary in August? But actually, some people are later than us. And yesterday, Florida, Wyoming, and Alaska all had primaries. The one that most people were watching was Florida. Of course, Kevin McCarthy-backed challenger was in a race against Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz won pretty handily last night and is back to cause chaos in D.C. So that was the big one last night. Of course, I think that wraps it up. I think we're done with the primaries.
I hope so.
And then as far as where Trump was headed, we know a lot of folks saw that photo of Eric Schmidt with J.D. Vance. I think they were headed to Michigan. Trump was in Michigan yesterday, and then they plan J.D. Vance and Trump are both going to North Carolina today. That's his third trip there in recent weeks. Trump was also, Randy, you played the audio from Nicole Shanahan about what she said on a podcast about potentially RFK dropping out of the race and coming into the Trump fold. Trump was asked about it and commented to CNN and basically said, yeah, I like RFK. And, I didn't know he was thinking about getting out. But if he does, he actually said he'd be open to considering him for a future administration role. How many administration roles does Trump promise people?
More than there are roles, and I thought he wanted to shrink government.
Interesting comment, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think Trump's keeping all of his options open, which I like, and knows that that RFK could be a big spoiler, and so kind of and typically if you were contrary to Trump in any way, you were just on, he would have behaved very differently and commented very differently about you. I think this comment shows more of this reserved, strategic Trump that we're seeing, our reimagined Trump here.
What do you think of Trump's return to more policy-based speeches? They're much less energetic. I've seen a few of those clips, heard a few. We'll play a couple. It's meaty, but he's not energetic. I don't know how that's going to play out. Is he going to maybe learn to be more energetic about those? I don't know.
He's old. I feel like most days he's more energetic than I am. So no, I think he's got enough energy, but I think he knows that on the issues we're right, and I think focusing on the issues is right where he should be. Also, what we can expect tonight at the DNC. So we heard from the Obamas last night. We're going to hear from former President Clinton. We're also going to hear from Nancy Pelosi and Pete Buttigieg tonight. So it's going to be, an action-packed night. Randy, you're going to get your pop.
Zack Smith. He'll join us at 8:10. So you don't want to miss that, because I think it is important that you are informed so that you can inform low-information voters. Not so much in Missouri. I don't think it's going to be any question about who wins the presidential in Missouri, but maybe folks who will come out and vote a flat ticket, and they're so inspired by hope and change. It's like 2008 again with Kamala Harris. But I think that it's clear that the Democrats have to be so pleased that Joe Biden's unbelievably angry, vitriolic, lie-filled, deceitful speech on Monday was buried after everyone went to sleep. Here's a little bit of what he said to women, and I know y'all need to check and see if your refrigerators are on and your, all of the electrical appliances that you may use might be on. I know some of you use curling irons and other things. Here we go.
He wrote the following, quote, "Women are not without electoral or political power. No kidding."
Have you checked whether your electricity is on?
Is your refrigerator running?
Women might be without electrical power.
Wow. That was rough.
Well, speaking of electrical power, it makes me think of utilities, which makes me think of Mike Murphy's Como Buzz story. We talked about it with Barbara Buffalo the other day. I think you guys talked about it a little yesterday when I was out. But for those of you who didn't hear it, Mike Murphy's in now, of course, part of the Zimmer News Network and publisher of Como Buzz and host of Columbia Buzz here on 93.9 Eagle every Sunday morning, along with Al. Now, Mike, this is a very complicated issue, but it sounds to me like the basic deal is there's serious questions as to whether some transfer of funds that would be paid by a utility if it were a privately owned firm are being transferred into the general revenue of the city of Columbia by the charter. But that may be at odds with a state constitution, right?
Yeah.
So tell us what's at issue here, because I think Barbara Buffalo may have tried to buffalo us on Monday when she said, A,
I was going to say
that's what we've always done, and B, the water rate increase that you say would be defrayed if this transfer wasn't going on. That's only a little bit. So go ahead with it.
All right. To try to keep it simple, the city of Columbia in its city charter authorizes an alternative tax, a tax on a utility, if on its own utilities, and they got to be clear not to call it a tax. It looks like a tax, smells like a tax, walks like a tax. The utility has to pay to the general fund each year the equivalent of what it would pay if it was a private business. So there's two legs to that. One, they charge a gross receipts tax, which is a sales tax that shows up on your water and electric bill. It's 7%. Just like a sales tax. Mm-hmm. The other thing is just like a property tax. There's a formula, and they pay to the city an amount that would be equal to, in the charter, what they would pay if they're a private business. Now, what's important here is this. The Hancock Amendment of the state constitution generally speaks to this. A municipality can raise fees all they want if they can justify them. You can charge what you can get for it. You need to justify it. The city charter doesn't allow water and light to make money, but allows them to break even and to manage electricity and the water utilities based on fees.
And plan for infrastructure maintenance and upgrade. Okay.
But this part of the charter that allows them to collect an equivalent tax, an equivalent property tax, they would pay then to the general fund, which is only funded by taxes. They would pay to the general fund an amount equivalent to what they would pay if they were a private business. If they were a private business, the city of Columbia would get $163,000 this year. They've been doing this for decades in property tax from this business. However, what the city just discovered accidentally by a citizen paying attention and asking questions is for all these years, the city hasn't been transferring an amount equal to what they would get anyway. They've been transferring an amount that what every taxing jurisdiction in Boone County would get. That's the school districts, the county, the fire districts, the library. So instead of transferring over $8,000, they've been transferring over $2.8 million.
On what basis?
That they're interpreting their right to do this, that the council did this based on the idea that this utility, if it were private,
would be paying all those separate taxes?
Yeah. Yeah.
But why would the city? Those taxes would be levied by other.
Oh, they are correct. That's just what the city's done, and nobody's questioned it or asked it for decades.
If I'm one of the other districts, I'd say I want some of that money.
Well, or if I was a big water user or electric user who's been paying an enormous bill all these years, and it's increasing rapidly, and they're already in danger or afraid of being sued by somebody like this. But here's the thing: the city can really do whatever it wants. If it wants to violate its own charter, it's just got to explain that to the citizens. But this Hancock Amendment says you can't disguise a tax as a fee, okay? Mm-hmm. So you can't raise fees somewhere and transfer it over and replace, in lieu of a tax, make it a tax. So what the city is now in danger of and what they're ignoring and they don't want to talk about, we thought they would on Monday night, is here they are, they're raising water rates. They're raising water rates.
4.5%?
Yep. That'll generate $1.6 million. All right. At the exact same time, they're raising rates because of expenses in the water department. Mm-hmm. One of the expenses is this tax, or this equivalent tax that they're transferring over. So they're going to suck $2.8 million out of the water utility and put it over in their general fund. At the same time, they're raising the fees, $1.65 million.
So a fee by tax by any other name is still a tax.
Well, that walks, talks, barks, looks, smells just like a tax. And that is precisely what Hancock is there. The Hancock Amendment to the Missouri Constitution, been there since 1980. An issue like this was fleshed out in the mid-'90s. Now, I'm waiting for City Attorney Nancy Thompson I can't believe she didn't speak at the City Council meeting Monday night, but they didn't even address this issue. So everything I just described to you is in a report that comes from, this isn't my investigation. This is all documented in city documents that they're sharing with each other. However, I don't think the city manager is being very clear about it. I don't think he's even being honest about it, although that's probably pushing it a little bit. You don't have to be particularly honest when your council members aren't really paying much attention anyway, or just, they're not really pushing for the truth or to find out what's happening here. So they just act like they're going to ignore this, which to me puts them at great risk for somebody to bring take them to court and get this settled.
Well, are they kind of hoping that by putting the report out there, like, well, we put it out there, but even though they don't want to draw a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, that's exactly
they're
right.
They're just banking on the fact that not a lot of people are going to read it.
If I wasn't around, nobody would be reading it, to be honest with you.
Well, and we talked about remedies, and one was, the city could self-correct, which obviously doesn't seem like they're interested in doing. The other is, a citizen could probably bring a lawsuit. But then when we had Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick on, I was reminded that if citizens want an audit of their own government, they can petition, get some signatures, and go in and have the auditor come take a look. There's a third option.
That needs to happen.
What's the threshold for that? Do you know?
I don't know.
Is it reasonable?
It's reasonable.
Okay.
That's
what's
tough.
frustrating though about city government right now. So they're in the middle of this massive expansion, 120 new positions in 3 years.
Yes, sir.
They're adding 31 new positions in the budget they're talking about right now. Okay.
Don't forget that DEI position. When everyone else is closing their departments, we're hiring.
They're already budgeting to be $500,000 in the red in their general fund this year while they're adding 31 new positions.
Wow.
They're forecasting and telling everybody they're going to be in the red going forward, so they're going to have to seek new revenue sources. They're talking about this openly. They're saying they're going to address it in October after this budget passes, that they're adding 31 new positions. So now you have, why don't we just, a council member needs to put their hand up and say, hold it. We need to just take a minute here. Let's deal with this $2.8 million. Let's not take that. Make the water fund solvent. This would be an option. Water fund healthy now. We don't have to raise rates in the water fund. We obviously have $2.8 million we can deal with over in the general fund. Here we're adding 31 positions.
Well, okay.
Mike, what's the for the average wake up, family member out there? Potentially worst case scenario. What could this mean for their utility and water bill?
Oh, I think it could break the city. Depends on what a court wants to say. How long have you been? So what you're asking is, did you do a water bill? So
Mayor Buffalo downplayed it.
It's not a huge amount. It could be $3 or $4 a month. But remember, it was $3 or $4 a month last year, right? And now it's $3 or $4 a month again this year. Yeah. And here's the other thing that nobody's talking about, except frankly Como Buzz. Your electric bill's gone up 30% for most of these same taxpayers. So they're paying $15 or $20 on the electric side. So it's not unusual. A very small user in Columbia could be seeing $20 more onto their utility bill right now than they were a year ago. Another thing they did, and don't get me rambling here, is they put this automatic cost adjustment in. The automatic cost adjustment that fluctuates with the market rates of electricity on my bill last month was $10. $10 additional onto my electric bill.
Like just a surcharge.
Yeah. that's, it ain't going to keep me from buying groceries, but there's a lot of people out there who another $10 a month. It just hurts.
On top of all the inflation nationally, when you go into the grocery store, I mean, it all piles up, right? It all adds up.
The hypocrisy down at City Hall to me is they're all into this social justice and equity. And what are they doing with their utility rates? They're putting it in the lowest tiers. They're putting it into the base rates. And they're regressive as heck. And it's like a regressive tax. They're piling the worst of this onto the people least able to afford it. Yeah. It goes against, to me, all of their this social justice stuff.
Well, they're stated populist initiatives, right? Where it's all for the little guy, but it's hurting the little guy.
Right now, we got to get to the bottom of. We're at the bottom of. We got to find out. I've contacted every council member and the mayor, and I'm waiting today to hear if they fully understand this issue and if they are really going to ignore it before I write something about it this week. Because I just can't believe they're going to pretend this isn't an issue. It was one thing then they were doing it by accident. Now, going forward, they are knowingly doing it. They are knowingly taking this money. They are knowingly transferring it from this other account, and they got to know that they got Hancock Amendment issues.
It's a pass-through tax to the customers,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, is there any other way to
you could, if you want to put it, if you wanted to find that in a dictionary, you'd put a picture of this next to it.
Of course, if you ask Justice John Roberts, he'd have a different opinion.
Remember
the Obamacare decision? Yeah. It's not a penalty.
Has the Missouri Public Service Commission weighed in on this, Mike?
Nope, they don't mess with private utilities. They only mess with public utilities. They only mess with the private utilities.
Investor-owned utilities.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
No, somebody's going to have to come and take a look, and it's clear. I think this is where the city manager gets himself in trouble because it's leadership from that position that explains what's going on and make sure the right thing gets done.
Now, you're a fair reporter. Could it be that we need 31 new positions because of the growth of population in the city? I mean, as a city expands, services that are existing need to be adapted to a wider audience. I get that. Is that possible?
We've had back-to-back years of 10% expense growth at City Hall. It's almost 19% in 2 years. And we will have added, after this budget year here, it's going to pass next month, 120 new positions, new staff positions at City Hall in 3 years.
What kind of things are they doing?
How many are police and fire?
Not hardly any.
Are they maintaining the parks? I mean, what are they doing? The roads suck in a lot of places.
It's across the board. What it is to me is it's just a feeding frenzy. They had all that federal money came in. The marijuana tax came in. The use tax came in. Sales tax are robust in Columbia.
Where do they put all these people? I mean, we did have the one person that was the instructor of how to use a roll cart.
That's very important. Now, come on, Stephanie. The people need to know.
A full-on FTE.
It says
Hasn't
Don
he been
Lemon with a
canceled
check mark.
like 3 times.
If you have a check mark, doesn't that mean it's a real deal? I don't know.
No, it means you pay. Now you can pay for it.
Okay, well, anyway, here it looks like Don Lemon.
Okay.
But he's interviewing people on sort of, who you voting for, and a bunch of women. Because I'm concerned about, I've heard enough of the other woman on the street that are going to vote for women, or African American on the street that are going to vote because Harris is of color. But here's a little bit of this.
How are you feeling about the election?
I'm going for Trump. I feel like every time they don't want somebody who is good for us to win, they throw somebody black in our face thinking that's going to make us vote for the black person.
I voted for Obama because he was black. I don't want to vote for her because she's the first black woman to run for president or to win.
I don't vote.
Well, I want Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I want Donald Trump.
Why do you apologize?
Well, I know nobody likes him, but we had good times with Donald Trump.
I'm running for Trump, so.
You are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why?
Yeah. I don't know. I just always been a fan of his, so that's what I'm running for.
I used to be against Trump. I used to live in Virginia. I saw the bad side of it, but really moving to Cleveland, but I saw the other side of it.
I'm supporting Trump.
You are. Mm-hmm. Because
it has to change.
Yeah.
It has to change, and now I vote more for what fits me better as a person rather than voting for the black person.
So that's interesting, and you would think, Don Lemon, who's LGBTQ, would go out of his way to either edit or just find a bunch of people. Well, yeah, he'd edit together the best of, pro-Harris. So I don't know. I got to make sure this is real, but I thought it's his. I don't know anymore.
I don't speak for anybody but myself, but I think if I was black and I felt the pressure to vote black and I had a black person putting a microphone in my face, I might either not talk to him or feel pressure to say, I would be nervous to say that I'm voting for Trump. Like many people of all races are sometimes hesitant to say I'm voting for Trump. So that seems like he's trying to lure us into, everyone's voting for Trump and you guys should stay home.
Let me ask you. You and Hannah often celebrate, there's a women's meeting or there's a women's group, a political group or a civic group or something. And I know at the chamber they have a women's section, I was told I could go give a medical presentation, though, at the women's session. Okay. I don't think I have to wear a dress. But so can you see, though, that there are people? Because you celebrate. There are more women-centered groups, I think, than there are.
Yeah, you could kind of put the microphone in our face and say, are you going to vote for Kamala just because she's a woman? Of course not. Of course not.
Let's say it was. Let's say there was a tight race, everything else being equal, and it was a woman versus a guy for the next governor of the state of Missouri, and pretty much policies were the same.
Would I pull the lever for the woman?
Yeah.
If everything's truly the same and that was the deciding factor, that would. For me, that would do it.
Yeah, if
sexist.
Everything else was the same.
Sexist.
If everything else was the same.
The sexism and racism, those are biological realities. We just tend to the momentum, the extravaganza that is the Democrat National Convention towards tomorrow's big, the ultimate coming out party for Kamala Harris, right?
I know what you mean, but
I meant in a debutante kind of a way. Do you know what a debutante is?
Yes, I do.
I used to play, when I was a musician, I played the Veiled Prophet in St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
And there was another one. So the Veiled Prophet was one. I think that was the, was that the not the gent, was that the evangelicals? And then there was also, there was the one for the Catholics, or was it vice versa? I forget. But the Catholics had their own.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of the convention,
The fleur-de-lis. There was the fleur-de-lis. That was the Catholics. And then there was the Veiled Prophet, which was not always the other. But yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I did find that goofy video of Chuck Schumer.
Oh, yeah. Boy,
in
he
his
was goofy.
entrance last night. So that is posted on the Wake Up in Missouri
good.
Facebook
That's
page.
a visual you got to see.
It was weird. We have a story out of Lynn that we probably should talk about.
We will. When Tim Walz came out, it was the same deal. Did you see him sort of bouncing around like Mr. Happy Dad? And
He does that. And
weird.
he does he has like a leg kick. Everyone's like, why is he auditioning for the Rockettes? Like, what is he doing? He's got this weird kick that he does.
Stephanie.
But I guess
I've worked for the Rockettes.
We're not really allowed.
Tim Walz is not a Rockette.
We got to come up with another word besides weird, because that
Maybe he's
word-
trying to replace Harrison Butker.
For those of you who are just joining us, I know you're feeling patriotic. I mean, we had a big primary season. You think about this great republic where you cast a vote and things are important. I thought we'd do it just once again. It's time to play our Star Spangled Banner here.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we...
That was the Women's Caucus opening the second day of the Democrat National Convention. I don't know what caucus they are. Maybe they're the caucus of the Democrat National Committee, but that's an embarrassment. One tweeter said, this is funnier than anything Saturday Night Live has done in 13 years. This is both an indictment on Democrats and SNL.
It would be, that I just imagine the people in the room. I've been to something like where you're sitting there and it's like a banquet and
Cringeworthy.
and then you're like all trying to hold you're looking at each other like, are we being punked? Is this for real? And even the one lady on the stage is kind of like, ugh. It's like she's Homer Simpson slowly backing into the bushes again.
This is going to be a controversial opinion. I think that's worse than Ingrid Andress, who sang the national anthem for a baseball game
I would agree.
a month or so ago.
I heard that.
And it came out that she was plastered during that performance and she went to rehab.
And Ingrid, she had a problem and she was all by herself. Here, you're like in a group setting. Like one person should know the words, right? Like, especially if you like volunteer to do this. You would think. We're not playing that again, by the way. People are...
Well, then you hear about people in sports stadiums too who get the echo effect while they're trying to, and it throws them off their lyrics because they're not getting it back to them in real time.
Yeah,
man, we were just at, where were we that we heard a really, I think it was the governor's prayer breakfast, and
that
I
one
feel
was good.
bad because I don't know who it was. It was, but man, it was good, and I thought, where was she at this ball game where Ingrid Andress was, because she killed it. If you know who that is, text me. She did a really great job.
She did.
I don't know who it is. We have to find it.
All right, Lynn schools are closed today. That's a big deal. I mean, it's
That
the
is
first
a big
week,
deal.
It's like the
Osage,
first week of school.
Not Lynn Tech.
No, Osage County R2 schools. And it has to do with something that happened yesterday, John.
Yeah, we went through their Facebook page, thanks to Stephanie, and here's what it says. It says, Wildcats families, due to an abundance of caution, classes at Osage County R2 schools closed today, 8/21, as well as all activities until further notice. Our students and staff safety is our primary concern. We will continue to collaborate with the Osage County Sheriff's Department for updates and guidance. And we've sent out a message to Osage County Sheriff. Haven't heard anything back yet.
Well,
But
Lynn is about 20 miles east of Jefferson City, and what happened yesterday was there was a vehicle pursuit. It started in Franklin County. It continued over to Osage. The suspect crashed. There were 3 people in the car, so 2 females were taken into custody.
yeah, they got 2 of them.
They're looking for a white male, and so I think Lynn residents got told last night, be on the lookout or like stay home, like stay inside and just be on alert. And I guess that caused the closure of the school today because they're still looking for
So it's
this
like an
guy.
extension of a community lockdown, basically.
Yeah,
right?
I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
sheriff's office is telling people to keep your doors
Oh
and your
my
vehicles locked.
Yep.
But I mean, that's only 20 minutes east of Jeff City. They came from Franklin, so who the heck knows where this guy is right now? So everyone, I think, should be on alert.
So Murph is on it, John's on it, and as soon as we know something, we will let you know.
Yes, sir.
All right. Boy, that's interesting. Wow, I tell you, it's so fun. You know, this makes me think of the back and forth argument. You know, how we've talked a lot about, is what you see or hear the truth? Is it real? Is it an intentional deception? Is it a deep fake? Is it an AI generated, well, okay. Have you heard this? Don't we all think, isn't there a general perception that violent crime has been on the rise? During the Biden-Harris administration, certainly. But then the other night, one of the speakers, maybe it was Harris, maybe it was Biden, I forget. No, it's on the decline. And then they show numbers. Well, then people push back and say, well, no, that's because they're not being charged. Criminals are being arrested but not charged. So I don't know. John, do you have any bead on that? I mean, it just seems like in the Columbia area, violent crime has been on the rise. People that have lived here for a long time talk about that. You guys have lived here a lot longer than I have, but I mean, in the time I've been listening to the station and then now hosting on it, it seems to me that the reported crime is up. But
it sure seems like it, doesn't it?
But then we hear that, some of the liberal outlets that claim to be authentic, legitimate outlets say, no, that's not really true. Nationally, it's gone down. But I got a feeling there's violence. Okay, which leads to me where I was going to ask you here, John. I'm asking you on air because I forgot to do it off air, but that's who we are here. We're a family. Sometimes we don't get to plan things out. Have you heard anything more from Locke Thompson and whether he's charged those Palestinian protesters? Remember when there was that fundraiser across the street from the Capitol, and Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft was assaulted by one of them? So other people were threatened. You were there.
Mayor Fitzwater of Jefferson City.
So, yeah, right.
We have not heard back from Locke, but in Locke Thompson's defense, I haven't followed up with him for a while on that one. I don't think Brian has either.
So my question to you was, we need to check back with Locke, because remember when he was on with us, I challenged him on. I said, hey, don't let that go. That's a big deal to us little people. I don't want to be involved in a downtown protest in Jefferson City or Columbia for that matter. I want to know that our local prosecutors are stopping crime at an earlier stage, before someone pulls a gun or a knife. A little pushing, shoving to me, isn't that assault? Why don't we prosecute that? It ought to be prosecuted. There
are varying degrees of assault. There are felony assaults and misdemeanor assault and all, and you would presume something like that would be on the misdemeanor side unless somebody got injured.
I don't know what it is. I think we got a problem, and I've said it before. Whether it's parenting and parents not standing over their kids and saying, by golly, I expect you to do the homework that's due tomorrow, and if you don't, you're shut down for this baseball season. Bang, done. I just don't think we have early and significant, meaningful consequences for people on the domestic front or on the justice front when it comes to, outside the home. Because we let people get away with stuff too early. And then these turn into these kind of crimes where people are shutting down a whole community, right? Because they're running from the cops. Since when is it okay to run from the cops?
Lately, apparently. I mean, I saw a police chase right out in front of Zimmer headquarters. And they were on the go, lights on and everything.
I've already forgot about that.
It was just like a month ago. I was 5 a.m. I look up and the lights are on and
I don't know.
They're not slowing down.
I don't know. How many of you out there are like me, or am I just weird this way? I mean, okay, so occasionally with all the licenses, I have to get a Bureau of Narcotics Diversion Division license in Missouri to write a darn tramadol prescription or a little Norco for someone that's had surgery or whatever. Okay, then I got to get a DEA license. Then I got to get a professional registration license with the Bureau of Slap Your Hands If You're Not a Good Doctor in Missouri. I'm against professional licensing.
That would be the Board of Healing Arts.
I'm against all professional licensing.
Really?
Yes.
Yikes.
That's a hot take.
Check with the Cato Institute.
I mean, I'm against professional licensing for like hair braiding, but for like surgeries,
Oh, you trust the state more than you do the surgical board of certification?
I mean, I know, but
All
I'm
the
against
state
licensing for lawyers.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
There's the
here?
rub.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
we pay
Stephanie Bell.
We pay our dues to like the Missouri bar, and
well, I
mean,
would trust the bar then.
how much? I mean, it's expensive, and then they like But I think I'm just saying, like, if you remove it from the state and give it to an entity like the Missouri bar, like it's not any better.
Would that be the same state that shut down places and told you to wear masks? Would that be that same state? Yeah, they got their act together.
But no licensing
all that a professional license to
whatsoever?
practice medicine does is you haven't killed people or diverted drugs. I mean, really, it doesn't tell you the quality of a doctor. And in fact, there's people that have licenses that I wouldn't send my dog to.
Okay, we need names. Name names.
No,
so
I'm not going to do that. And you know that there's lawyers you wouldn't recommend to a friend. Come on,
That's
come
true.
clean.
I think that's true, and I think and now too, like I mean, so many other things. I mean, you can get marijuana at a retail location without seeing a doctor. You can get all sorts of injections and other like serious beauty things without an Ozempic. You can get it like a spa, I think now too, right?
That's a prescription device.
I don't think so.
Well, and you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm a free market dude. I really am. Let the free market decide. If you want to go to someone that hasn't gone to an internship or a residency and hasn't, been certified by a certifying organization, and you go and things get bollocksed up, okay, there's the courts for that.
But you're always dogging on the courts and the insurance and the plaintiff's lawyers and all that.
But you've convinced me the courts are wonderful arbiters of justice where there is no finger on the scales and everything always works out well.
They are.
So I trust you. So my point is...
You don't have to worry about that anymore anyway, especially if you're practicing like OBGYN stuff because, that new abortion amendment
I was going to go there,
completely eliminates any remedies for any women receiving health care, prenatal health care.
But what I'm saying is, I just think that licensure protects mediocrity because it gives the illusion that because you have a license, whether you're a hairdresser, a gravedigger, a doctor, or a lawyer, that you're a good one. It sets a minimum bar.
You can pass the bar test.
And I don't want
You had to pass your board.
I don't want
right?
people on the Board of Healing Arts, 6 people who don't know you. They haven't experienced your care. They know nothing about you. You've checked the boxes on a few things. You've filled out some whatever. I mean, I don't want them determining whether you're a good or bad doctor or lawyer or nurse practitioner or anything.
So how else do you protect people from bad doctors?
How do you decide whether to go to one medical spa or another?
I talk to my friends.
That's called the free market. Thank you very much. Coming up, What's Hot with Hannah.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
To me, being a Democrat, I know that Democrats will take care of everybody. It's not just looking out
It's all right.
Okay.
I have bad news for members of Gen X who maybe want to see their name continued on to the next generation, and that would be their first name, because we're getting a list of names from Gen X that used to be super popular that are nearly extinct with little babies today.
Okay, I'm leaning into this one.
So we have names like Donna, Carrie, Nigel, Tracy, Lindsay, Gary. Ooh, bad news for Gary Nolan.
Ooh.
Names like Tanya, Lorraine, Wayne.
Hey.
I'm reading the list.
That's my new grandson's middle name after his papa.
I am reading the list. But folks from Gen X are coming to this realization and also realizing that they're becoming, quote, middle-aged. And they're devastated. We've also got Stuart, Denise, Keith, Barry. And if you think about it, when's the last time you saw a young person or a baby named Cheryl?
Or Denise?
Yeah.
But like everything that's old becomes new again. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of the thing right now when we were naming our kids was like all really old names. And I think that some of those will circle back.
Yeah.
But and kids these days, their names are weird. Have you seen a class list lately?
Oh, yeah. All sorts of extra like E's and I's and Y's added to names.
And just like, yeah, I'm a classic kind of name person. I don't love anything too out there, but I do feel bad for teachers these days because, they have to spell it. And I think Eden went to, I think it was kindergarten, and she had 15 kids in her class, and I think 6 of them were E's. It was like Eden, Emma, Elise, Ella, Ellie.
Well, and another thing, Steph, I don't know if you've seen this on TikTok or not. Something that's become popular as a profession is people will do baby name consultations.
That's weird.
With expectant parents.
What?
And it's a high dollar industry. Like,
There you go.
Upwards of $350 an hour sometimes for parents to do, a meeting or a Zoom call or whatever with a baby name consultant who, they ask you questions about, the sort of vibe you want your name to have. Or if they already have siblings, do you want the name to fit well with the sibling set that you have going on? It's wild.
Yeah, I will say it's harder when you already have like 2, that third one, because you want it to like fit with them, but you also want it to be like their own thing. And I do think that's hard, but that sounds like up there with the people who like pay for sorority rush consulting. And I think for most people, names are kind of like, we talked to Senator Rowden yesterday about like which department would you not want to work with? He's like, there's some that I don't want. And that's how names are. You come up with a list and you're like, I know a Randy. Nope. I know this person. Nope. And it's way easier to cross names off than it is. And so a lot of times it's process of elimination.
I've heard teachers have a terrible time coming up with a name for their kids because they know so many bad kids.
Oh, that's hilarious. When we come back,
the sideline and wait. Well, it's got to be this game. No, it doesn't. Come watch this team and be excited about this team and embrace this team. And the same challenge that I have for our players is let's have a 1-0 mindset. Let's try to be a 1-0 team and be a 1-0 fan base. Don't get excited about the game in November after the bye week. Like, I don't know what that game's going to look like. I know this week next week versus Murray State's the most important game we have. And we need to sell it out because we need to show the rest of the country that we're serious about our program. But
Coach Drinkwitz generating a challenge for Mizzou fans. Next Thursday night, the season opens against Murray State. Our tailgate series starts then as well, right?
Yeah, our Tiger Tailgate season starts Thursday night, 2 hours before kickoff.
I'm going to be there.
They're in front of Mizzou Arena. Walk-ons will be helping us out this year.
Oh, really?
And if you've not eaten there, it's like maybe in the last year or so, new to town, sort of a bar and grill type of vibe. So I'm super excited for them to be joining us this year. And of course, free booze, free non-alcoholic beverages as well. So yeah, they're in front of Mizzou Arena.
Free beer?
Yeah.
Really?
And the 11th ranked Missouri Tigers.
That too.
Is that how they start the season? 11th ranked?
Yes.
That's
Yes,
good.
sir.
Wow. So,
really high hopes.
He
for
makes
this
a good
fall.
point, though. It's easy to overlook the early games, but once in a while we hear about an upset in those early games, and, you get a little too much swagger because of your rankings and the last season, and oops, drop your guard. Another team's hungry. They want to make a name, too.
Well, and I am such a Coach Drinkwitz fan, and I know Mizzou kind of took some flack when they announced that they were hiring him as head coach because he was coming from a smaller school and didn't have a ton of experience.
Appalachian State, but he did
Yeah.
win their championship there for them.
Right, and kind of a, newer head coach, a little green to the head coaching gig. But I just feel like what he has been able to do for the program in such a short amount of time, but also you can just tell that he cares about the players and cares about them past just the pretense of football, if that makes sense. I'm such a big Coach Drinkwitz fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a remarkable start to his career. If you think about it.
And I think we've heard, what is it, the Flutie effect or whatever. I think the enrollment numbers are up huge this year. And so the ripple...
Over 1,000 for new freshmen.
The ripple effect of the football program into those numbers, and then the ripple effect of an additional 1,000 students on campus that are needing housing and food and everything else in the community, I mean, is just huge. And so having a good, I'm not anti-football. I like Mizzou football, but when I was in high school, I think I'm like, it's about academics. Not everything's about sports, but certainly having what we've seen with the university on the academic side and with the reactor and it just seems like everything at Mizzou, and including the football program, is moving in one direction, and that's a positive one, and it has huge effects for Mid-Missouri.
Really escalating the prominence of of our university in national perspective, right? I mean, it just elevates it.
Well, and I know that the home opener isn't sold out as a whole, but I believe the season ticket passes are sold out for the football season.
They are gone.
Yeah.
Officially gone. There's still some few single game tickets left, we understood, but the big games are, spoken for.
Okay, so my daughter Shannon is in a hospital bed at a military hospital in North Carolina, and she gives me permission to tell you this story. I tell it for a couple reasons. A, just because it really was heartwarming last night, and it told me a lot about biology of motherhood. And I guess in contrast to the free abortions and the IUD statues and things in DNC, it just was an interesting dovetailing of those two events. So, Shannon delivered uneventfully her third baby last Tuesday. She'd had a little bump in her blood pressure a couple days before, so they brought her in and induced her a few days earlier than they'd planned. She's given me permission to talk about this. And so everything was fine. Helene was there last week, came home, and we thought, oh, it's great, because, she had a really bad postpartum hemorrhage, the second pregnancy. And we're like, everyone's on pins and needles. It's like, okay, whew, good to have this one under our belt. Whew, all good. And then she calls me yesterday and says, Dad, I'm really swollen. I look like the Pillsbury Doughgirl on my ankles. What's going on? I said, just check your blood pressure. It's probably just fluid retention, but check your blood pressure. The next call I get is my blood pressure is 160 over 110, and I have a headache.
What's your blood pressure supposed to be?
It's supposed to be 120 over 80 or less. I mean, a young, healthy woman postpartum that hasn't had problems should probably be lower than that. But I mean, that's anything below 120 over 80, it's fine. I'd like to see it below 70 on the lower number, but that's all good. So I said, look, there's this entity called postpartum late onset preeclampsia after you've delivered. Sometimes we see blood pressure problems, before pregnancy, before delivery, and you get some protein in the urine, and it's a pretty well-known phenomenon. About 10% of first-time moms will have it, and it's called preeclampsia. It can lead to seizures if it's not treated right, so either you deliver or you give magnesium sulfate IV, which makes you feel like poop, frankly, but it prevents you from having a seizure. Anyway, we treat, and sometimes we see right after delivery the blood pressure bumps for a couple days, but there's this thing that is now becoming more and more common. Maybe it's more commonly recognized because women are more attuned to the whole before, during, and after pregnancy thing. And I love that. I mean, whether it's postpartum depression or issues like this. And we see hypertensive problems a lot more in certain ethnic groups, like black women tend to have more problems this way. So anyway, I said, honey, you got to go to the hospital because you may have this problem and they have to treat you, and I'm just concerned about it, And the next call I get, I was sobbing in my backyard sitting here. We were getting ready to eat. By the way, I posted the meal that Helene made last night. It was unbelievable. Posted on my private Facebook page, or my own Facebook page. And she called me, Dad, they're going to admit me, and yeah, she has late onset postpartum preeclampsia.
Ugh.
And I said, honey, don't be scared. It's going to be okay. I called a maternal fetal medicine friend of mine just to confirm that, I gave her what I knew, what she had told me. Liver enzymes are up a little bit. The kind of enzymes that go up if you have hepatitis or cirrhosis or, various things. And they go up in preeclampsia. Sometimes your platelets can drop low and you could have a syndrome where you start bleeding. I mean, it can evolve, but, probably she's going to be fine. And so far this morning, she tells me she's fine. But what struck me about the call and the sobbing and the worry, I said, honey, are you worried about yourself or what's the deal? Actually, I didn't even have to ask her. The first thing out of her mouth was, so they're going to put me in the step-down ICU and I can't be with Shep.
That's the worst.
And I thought,
and Shep is how old?
A week.
A week? Ugh.
And it just, in the context of a convention where women are screaming like banshees in the face of reporters that are asking about free abortions, courtesy of the St. Louis Planned Parenthood mobile abortion mobile. They're giving out, I think, medical pills and vasectomies for someone else. And this celebration of the taking of life in contrast to, look, my daughter's not the only one that I've heard this from. When it happened during COVID when we had to separate moms and babes. It turned out that may not have been the best idea anyway, but that gravitational pull between a mother and child, that's not a human thing that some person invented with a policy in D.C. That's not something contrived because someone read a Laura Ingalls Wilder book. That's the creator's invention. And for us to minimize the gravity of that, the importance of that, and how that relationship between mom and child is what drives the world. Because without that, we'd be extinct. I just think we need to think about that. It just broke my heart to hear her worrying more about the fact she couldn't nurse her baby and had to pump and wasn't with her baby than she had a threatening illness. She's going to be fine. I think everything's looking better this morning, and she's going to be fine. But to all of you ladies who are pregnant or have friends or family that are pregnant, it's a good idea, especially if there's any hypertensive problems, and gestational hypertensive problems are on the rise. They're really epidemic. A lot of it has to do with the obesity crisis. Shannon's not obese. I don't know what it is, but a lot of it has to do with that. And who knows? Is it toxins in our environment? No one really understands why. But if you have that problem after delivery, don't become inattentive to the fact that it can become a problem and rear its ugly head. Normally, once the placenta comes out, that's it. It's you're done. It's all good. Life's good. Take care of your baby. Have a nice life raising your kid. But don't forget to take your blood pressure periodically, a couple times a day, if you have a gestational hypertensive problem with or without it being called preeclampsia, because things can go south late, as we're finding out.
Well, and whether you're, pregnant or post-pregnancy or not, I think advocating for yourself is becoming ever more important. So, trusting your gut, and when you know something's wrong, and I know there are lots of people who show up to an urgent care, something either with a kid or for themselves, and get told, oh, it's fine, here's some pills, go home. And you're like, that's not, I know in my gut that that's not it.
Right.
And so I think developing some personal responsibility over your own health and advocating for yourself and your family is really becoming more important.
And I can tell you in the office, I'd rather have someone come in or, give me a call and bother me, quote, bother me, patients call, I'm sorry to bother you. No, I'd rather know and have it be a false alarm and we get a couple tests and it was nothing to worry about. It's not pneumonia, it's just a little viral bronchitis, we get a chest x-ray, whatever. I'd rather do that than, have not known about it, and then you have something that's way far down the road that's much tougher to treat and much more threatening. So let your doc know if you have anything that's happening weird. And if it continues, despite them reassuring you, tap them again. Tap them again. Don't let it go. John, what's up when we come back on your segment?
How about some real prime choices?
Are we talking steak here?
Amazon Prime?
Steak?
Stay tuned.
Amazon or meth?
Tech, coffee machines, Legos, and skincare, and then there is the silly stuff. Talking about gifts for your funniest coworker, family member, or friend, and now that Amazon Prime Day has come and gone, all three of those categories, needs, wants, and silly gifts, were available at huge discounts from the giant. It was 16th and 17th of last month. Amazon's biggest sale of the year, with deals on everything from AirPods to air fryers. So we rounded up some of the weirder ones that people were buying across the U.S. The Sea Roomy Burrito Tortilla Throw Blanket.
Oh, I love these.
Wraps you in cozy comfort that looks good enough to eat. Perfect for burrito lovers or anyone who enjoys a quirky nap. Just $13.59. The Aquilo Squirrel Finger Puppet Set, which is almost kind of creepy. Turns your fingers into playful squirrels. Perfect for impromptu puppet shows, just $5. The Toy Smith multi-voice changer alters your voice into various tones, ideal for pranks or if you want to mess with the cops, $12.49. And finally, the Laturdi mini golf toilet game brings a whole new meaning to bathroom breaks. You practice your putt while you ponder, turning every trip to the toilet into a mini golf adventure, just $11.99 on Amazon Prime. And now you know the rest of that story.
A steal, really.
How about that?
You can find the best things on Amazon. I mean, if you can dream it up in your head and you put it and Google it in that box, there is
How about drinking the dirty pond water straw like Randy likes to get the kids?
That's on Woot, which is an Amazon somehow. I think it's the stuff that, like you mentioned, John, but one step even more remote from anything that people need.
It's somewhere between Temu and Amazon.
Temu's out there. That game reminds me, we got a game, I think it came from Amazon, with the kids one year, and it was called Flickin' Chicken. And it's kind of like it's kind of like bocce ball, where you like throw out a point and then you have to try to throw like a ball close to the point, except you were throwing rubber chickens. And so everyone played with their own rubber chickens.
That sounds like a Letterman stunt.
It was hilarious. I mean, the kids really got a kick out of it, but we had a good time.
Those tortilla blankets that John was talking about are so fun. They're round, and they literally have, you know how a tortilla will be mostly white, but it's got the little like brown spots on it, or
where they cook it on the plancha.
Yeah, it literally has that print on it, and it looks like one gigantic tortilla. And it is pretty much my go-to anytime I need like a white elephant gift for something.
Oh.
Or, you know, some type of like gift exchange where you do goofy gifts. That is like my go-to. So a hot tip from Hannah.
I didn't mention one other that made the cut. The Comedy Meets Comfort with the oversized granny panties. Only $11.99. Get a lot of material for your $11.99 in more ways than one.
I actually almost purchased a baby version of this tortilla blanket because I hadn't seen that before when I was looking for a baby gift recently for someone. So
that'd be a good one.
That's cute.
It came with a matching hat.
I was getting the giggles because I love a good white elephant party, and my favorite gift of all time that I unwrapped at a white elephant party, it was about maybe a year after Greitens resigned, and we had a state worker in the group, and apparently all the state workers had gotten a free copy of his book. And so I'm unwrapping, and it's like the disgraced governor's book as a white elephant. I kept it, and if you go to a party with me in the future, you might be the lucky winner.
Have you seen the family white elephants where, you know, all the cousins and grandkids will get together, and over the course of the year, the goal is to steal something from grandma's house, like without her noticing. And so everyone is in on it except that one person. And so you're doing this family gift exchange, and grandma or mom or whoever is going, "Oh, I had one of those. Oh, I had one of those too.
Look, my
Now,
teeth.
wait a minute."
Oh, wow. That's
it usually
cruel.
takes like 4 or 5 opens before she realizes, like, how'd you guys get all my stuff?
The delegate.
validated and with the roll call vote as the presidential and vice presidential nominees of the Democrat Socialist National Party, my denomination of them. And in a former life, of course, Kamala Harris likes to tout the fact that she is an effective and tough law and order abiding prosecutor, right? And she knows about the likes of Donald Trump because she's gone after him as both the Attorney General and then before that the DA of the Attorney General of California and DA of San Francisco. Zack Smith joins us now. He knows a little bit about rogue prosecutors. In fact, wrote a whole book about them called Rogue Prosecutors, How Radical Soros Lawyers Are Destroying America's Communities. He joins us now. How you doing, Zack?
I'm doing well, Randy. Thanks for having me on the show this morning.
So I'm sure that you will validate what a tough on crime, level-headed, fair, and even-handed DA and AG she is, right?
Well, it's funny you say that, Randy, because I joke that Kamala Harris, if you listen to her talk about her time as DA and Attorney General, it's kind of like Burger King. She wants you to have it your way. If you want her to be tough on crime, she is tough on crime. If you want her to be a progressive, she was a progressive. But I think at the end of the day, actually, I know, if you look at her record, it becomes very clear that Kamala Harris has very radical, very dangerous views on our criminal justice system.
Well, I guess my overall perception of the back and forth, looking at what she says on the one hand and what her critics say on the other, is that sometimes she was lenient when she shouldn't have been, and at other times she was too tough when she should have been more lenient. I mean, I don't know. Am I just reading the fake news and aggregating it improperly?
No. Look, like so many of today's rogue prosecutors, Kamala Harris was soft on crime in many instances. And when she wasn't inappropriately soft on crime, unfortunately, she was incompetent at doing her job. And I'll give you an example. When she was district attorney, there was a police lab technician that was very corrupt that ended up committing ethical lapses, ethical violations. Kamala Harris didn't turn that information over to defense attorneys. And because she didn't turn that information over, as she was required to do, it ended up that about 600 cases had to be dismissed while she was district attorney. So 600 cases had to be dismissed simply because she didn't turn over the required information. There was also another instance while she was district attorney of San Francisco where a very bad individual ended up shooting and killing a police officer. He also shot and severely wounded the officer's partner. Kamala Harris wouldn't seek the death penalty for him, even though it was authorized, even at that time, Senator Dianne Feinstein and Senator Barbara Boxer, both California Democrats, thought that the death penalty should be sought. And yet Kamala Harris, she wouldn't do it. She didn't believe in the death penalty, and so she wouldn't pursue that. That case was so controversial, her decision was so bad that the then California Attorney General threatened to take that case and others away from her office if she wouldn't do her duty and seek appropriate punishments for crimes. And there are other examples as well.
Wow.
But those are just two quick ones that I think give an idea of what her time as DA was like.
Okay, so we're talking with Zack Smith, is with Heritage, of course, and hosts a podcast on SCOTUS called SCOTUS 101 every Friday. And we're talking about Kamala being a very, very nuanced prosecutor, whenever it serves her political purposes. Okay, so one of the stories that she's telling, Zack, is that she was aggressive in prosecuting fentanyl dealers and, illegal drug dealers, and trying to sort of conflate that into some kind of a tough on the border stance when she was the AG in California. What do we know about that in terms of her either border advocacy or not, or in practice what she did or didn't do?
Well, look, I mentioned some of the crimes. There was another instance, another specific instance where she refused to seek the death penalty, refused to seek an appropriate punishment. Illegal alien in the country illegally, MS-13 gang member, ended up killing a father and two sons, and yes, she went seek the death penalty for him. She made charging decisions that essentially benefited many illegal aliens while she was the district attorney. And so I think it's clear that even back in her early days of elected office, she was not harsh on people who are in our country illegally. But, keep in mind, Randy, that apparently now she never was the border czar, or at least that's what folks on the left are claiming, which I can't blame them, given the fact that it looks like she, was an absolute disaster in that role and never even really visited the border as the border czar.
Yeah, she is bizarre as far as I'm concerned, because she is so chameleon on these matters. I mean, apparently, I think she was, I've also read that she was advocating the Obama administration to be a little lighter on crime as well, on immigrant crime and crime, committers. So I don't know, it's just very odd. Now, another issue that she has been touting recently is, well, it's not recently, I guess it was during her campaign, and I won't waste our time with the clip, but there's this clip where she rails about the high cost of pharmaceuticals. And then when she says that on that clip from 2019, that when pharmaceuticals benefit from government-funded research, that she will take their patents. And I mean, she was really very strident about it. She's very, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, I can do that, because someone in the audience says, can you take their patents? Well, I mean, is that just crazy campaign rhetoric, or would the executive have that kind of authority?
Well, look, it's certainly very troubling. I think look, I'm not an economist, but, one of her other economic platforms she's run on is implementing price controls. It's one of the few areas that economists on the left and the right agree is a terrible idea that would absolutely devastate our economy. Look at what happened in Venezuela and other countries where price controls have been implemented. And so I think this is certainly par for the course along that line. But look, it's very troubling. And, I want to highlight one other thing, Randy. We talked about her flip-flops on certain issues. And, certainly, some of her views on pharmaceutical companies, other economic issues. But legally speaking, if we go back to her time as AG, if we go back to her time as DA, she said that there need to be more police on the streets. That's the best way to keep a community safe. Today, she says that's not true. And in fact, she was a big backer of defunding the police. She applauded L.A. Mayor Eric Garcetti when he cut about $150 million from the LAPD's annual budget. So I think what you described earlier, that she was Kamala the chameleon on these issues and others as well, I think that description was very accurate, because she's certainly kind of sticking your finger in the air, seeing which way the political winds are blowing, and that's the position that she ends up taking so often.
Now, I feel like in 2016, court picks was such a huge deal, and we've heard less and less about that, and not very much at all in this cycle. Contrasting her with Trump, do you have concerns about the types of people she would potentially put on the bench?
Concerns is the most mild way I could think to put that. I'm horrified to think about the types of picks that she would put on the court. And, it's interesting. Donald Trump just came out, I think, earlier this week and said he's going to release a list in the next several weeks again about his potential Supreme Court picks. What concerns me about Kamala Harris is she is, very focused on categorizing everyone and every issue in our country along racial lines. She's been a big promoter of the idea of equity over equality, basically meaning that people should be treated differently based on race so that everyone, quote, ends up in the same spot at the end of the day. And so I'm worried that she would, again, focus on those superficial qualifications over the substantive qualifications of nominees, their judicial philosophy, how they view their role as a justice on the court or as a judge in the lower federal courts. But again, if we go back to her time on the Senate's Judiciary Committee, I think it's very clear that she has, a very radical view of our court system, one that does not comport with an original understanding of our constitutional system.
Well, yeah, you talk about that. We remember when, she was so far on the left, and her over-the-top grilling of Neil Gorsuch and then Jeff Sessions as USAG. She's kind of worn that whole angle, kind of worn her heart on her sleeve when it comes to that one.
Yeah, and don't forget, too, She, along with Senator Elizabeth Warren, have explicitly endorsed very radical ideas like reparations for Black Americans. Now, how that would play out in practice, I don't think Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or anyone else has really thought that through. What if you are of a mixed race ancestry like Kamala Harris is? If you have both slave owners and those who were enslaved in your family tree, how does that work? There are many moral and practical problems with this idea of reparations, and yet Kamala Harris, as with so many other ideas, is forging ahead. And, don't forget as well, I think, specifically talking about her judicial picks, her role in selecting judges and justices, go back and look at some of her clips, particularly when Justice Brett Kavanaugh was up for confirmation in front of the Senate. Her questions to him, I think, were absolutely shameful. And she deserves, a lot of scrutiny for the fact that she bought into a lot of the false narratives that were surrounding Justice Kavanaugh at that time.
As she was making those embarrassing, a spectacle of herself questioning Kavanaugh, I hearkened back to the way Joe Biden led the Judiciary Committee in the Clarence Thomas hearings. And because I had seen that Clarence Thomas documentary, and I thought, wow. Like president, like vice president, or vice president to be. Okay, I got to get a little bit into the weeds for you in the last minute and a half we have here. I read this story about Judge Ho, who wrote an opinion for the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that revolved around restricting something called geofencing warrants. And to me, it seems like policing agencies will just ask Google to say, hey, we just want to know everyone that was in a certain area for a while. I mean, it sounds like without, what's it called, justified cause or whatever the right stage is. They're sort of casting a wide net using technology as to where people were and then reverse engineering it into arresting someone. Now, maybe that's a crude interpretation, but Judge Ho in the Fifth Court said no. What say you?
Yeah, it's actually a very fascinating case. It's created what's known as a circuit split. Other courts have allowed these geofencing warrants to go forward. And in fact, geofencing warrants are fairly commonly used today. If someone's in a location with a cell phone, it's how officers, federal agents often figure out who someone is that ended up committing a crime. Now, Judge Ho and others on the Fifth Circuit said that these warrants lack, the particularity required to pass muster under the Fourth Amendment. They liken them to the general warrants that were used during the colonial era that, so many framers found odious and really rejected outright. Professor Orrin Kerr, he's a Fourth Amendment expert, teaches at Berkeley Law. He's written a lot on this topic. He's been very critical of Judge Ho and this particular decision. But it'll be very interesting to watch what happens going forward, particularly because the use of geofencing warrants are so prevalent today. And I think there's a very real issue, a possibility that this issue will make its way up to the Supreme Court before too long.
It seems related to me, but probably not in a legal sense. I think about how the Justice Department has used broad nets to cast their investigation, sometimes prosecution, of people that were just in the area of Washington, D.C. at the J6 rallies. People that were at the protest 5 blocks away, but sometimes they're called in and, people knocking on their door with FBI on their lapel just because they got some travel log, some airline ticket that a person was there. You hear about those stories. It seems related to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just get concerned about that.
Well, don't forget, too, Randy, certainly our cell phones are powerful tools for tracking us. But talking about January 6th, banks are also providing vast amounts of information. They're required to report a number of transactions to the federal government. And so the federal government has a number of ways that we are being, frankly, surveilled today that I think would be very troubling to the framers of our Constitution.
All right. We have to have a little of those first principle conversations every time we get together with Zack Smith. All right. We thank you so much for your analysis, Zack. Look forward to talking next time in a couple of weeks. I'm sure that there'll be more policy that we'll want to talk about coming out of the Harris-Walz campaign if they ever want to divulge it. Thanks, Zack. Appreciate it.
Of course. Great talking with you, Randy. Take care.
All right, you too. The market report coming up on the Morning Bell. Stay tuned for more on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
I just wanted to thank you very much for being where you are for 3 hours of my day.
I'm a new listener and already.
.33%, just a hair, just a little bit. Driving those losses really was big losses amongst the energy sector. And looking forward to today, though, everything looks like bumped up into the green just slightly. So maybe a better day is in our future. Now, since I started reading this article, I can't stop thinking about it. A, we know I hate birds. B, I have serious...
Among many other things.
Why do you hate birds?
They're just gross. I don't like them. Especially living birds.
So-
But I'm not... This isn't about living birds.
Oh,
This is
okay.
about fake stuffed birds. And... right? And
Rubber chicken stuffed birds.
I'm on a bird kick today. I hate birds, but I also hate being left out of something cool. And I consider myself cool. Like I'm up on most trends. I
FOMO
feel
Bell,
like.
they call you?
Yeah, I have bad FOMO. Apparently Target sells these $5 birds and they're like decorated and they like, I've never seen one of these in my life. I've never seen one, but people are obsessed. They're $5. They come out sporadically. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal about how this person was waking up at like 3 a.m. to go stand in line for these birds. And then apparently the bird people is what I'm going to call them, like hoard them. If they see them, they'll like buy them all and then they resell them on eBay for like hundreds of dollars. They have a photo of someone who has one of these birds tattooed on their body. And then there's a story of this other lady who does birdscapes and arranges all of her birds and then takes pictures of them, which apparently right now they're having a backyard barbecue with a pool. There have been full-on weddings between
Trump. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump.
Trump. Trump.
Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is?
These people are sick.
Well, Trump is counterpunching. He's making some waves while the Democrats are having their party. Welcome back into Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
By the way, each of those separate Trumps were different speakers from the DNC, and we're only on day 3.
How many times has his name been mentioned? Like 200 times, and they've mentioned, policy four times.
Well, and even more than the number of times. Like if you took the minutes, how many minutes have they spent talking about him versus talking about how bad he is versus how good Kamala is?
Yeah.
More time spent on Trump.
I think this is going to come down to who is most effective. Are the Democrats going to be more effective at making this about Donald Trump and his often boorish personality? Or is it going to be about can the Republicans, Trump, Vance, make it about Kamala Harris's record and agenda? That's what it's about. And I don't know, thus far, you look at the polls seem to be indicating that it's a tight race. Now, I love how the left-wing media, John, loves to talk about the main numbers, the national numbers. They tend to not want to talk about the battlegrounds because in those, Trump's holding his own there.
Well, that's why he's making the swing through the battleground states right now, too, to sort of reestablish and all that. J.D. Vance has been right there on his coattails with him as well.
So the other day, he was in a jurisdiction, Trump was, in a place called Howell, Michigan, where apparently there's a little nest of white supremacists or something. I don't know.
They had some event or
Isn't
something.
that where maybe the ones that threatened Whitmer, that whole deal that came down? But at any rate, there's some allegation that there's some nucleus of some white supremacy there, at least among the reporting class. So the Harris campaign accused them of coming to Howell, Michigan, only to appeal to the white supremacists. And a reporter asked Donald about this, and boy, did he have his comeuppance on that.
Thank you, everybody, very much. Thank you for coming.
Reporters asking him about that.
Who was here in 2021? Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
The reporter asked him, hey, what do you say about the Harris campaign saying that you just came here to appeal to white supremacists? Who was here in 21? He says he was away from the mic. He walks back.
The laugh is what gets me. He's like so smitten with himself. He's
just
like,
great. I'll do it again. It's great.
Who was here in 2021? Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And what's cool is all of the sheriffs and sheriff's deputies behind him, they're breaking up. They're all but applauding. It's like, oh, that was great. And now there's another one. His running mate, J.D. Vance, savages a reporter. Well, actually, savages Tim Walz in this little clip.
To know how you were prepping for a debate with Tim Walz, who has described himself as a bad debater. Who's helping you, and how are you prepping?
Well, I found a good friend from back home who embellishes and lies a lot, and I'm having him stand in for Tim Walz. That's what we're doing during our debate.
To know
what was great about that one is, again, there's law enforcement standing behind him, and one of the guys is just biting his lip. When he says that right at the end of the clip, he wants so bad to bust out in laughter, but he's trying to remain professional and objective, I guess. Oh, the back and forth is rich, isn't it? Ah, man, it's great.
High drama for sure.
And it's only going to get better. I'm anxious to see what the first polls after the DNC are going to say.
They're not
That
getting...
was like we pitched to Chris Arps yesterday. My stock question is, when's the shine going to wear off Kamala's penny? And Chris's take was a whole lot sooner than later, he thinks.
Well, and I saw some early numbers yesterday out of the betting markets, and they were saying that she's not getting any sort of bump, and actually she's kind of lost ground this week. And so the shine's already starting to wear off, which, 2 weeks ago when I was in Florida with other Republicans, I heard a lot about a double bump. She's got the bump from her announcement and then the bump from the convention. And if she doesn't get that second bump and it stays as tight as it is now, I think we're in a really good place.
Yeah. And the other thing about her is now she's claiming she wants to go up to, it's about 45% capital gains tax, I guess, she wants to invoke, they keep talking, the Democrats keep talking. So if they're talking about it, they will initiate it, given the chance. The unrealized wealth, the unrealized gains tax, remember? So if you've got artwork, or maybe you have an old jalopy that you've rehabbed and it's, it was a piece of junk sitting in the salvage yard or whatever, and or maybe in your mom's garage, and you rehab it and now you've got a classic collectible, the government's going to want to tax that before you sell it, or artwork or whatever. I mean, first of all, how would you implement it? And secondly, how can they predict what the market's going to be? I mean, what are they going to do? Come in and raid your house and get a search warrant to see what kind of, value? Do you have an American Girl doll? Do you have a Target collectible fuzzy doll like we were talking about last
the birds
segment?
Yeah.
The birds, not a doll.
Yeah, I mean, you're hearing these ideas out of her mouth that, on the surface maybe sound good. All these rich people with their expensive junk, let's take money from them.
Class warfare.
Yeah, but you're also hearing tax on tips, and that sounds good, until. But again, when you get down into the details of, is it constitutional, which she doesn't care, and we know from Biden's all of the beatback he's gotten from our state AG that he doesn't care either, and I think she will be in the same vein. But also, how are any of these things going to be enforced or implemented? We hear zero about that, and I think in the past you've seen some pretty serious policy books or put out, and she's really not put out much except for just throwing out these ideas, and she's flip-flopped so much that you're I'm not sure if this is the idea or if she's walked that back, if we're back on this or what. It's pretty scary. But tax on tips, I heard something yesterday that I thought was interesting. It's all right, I'm going to be going to Zimmer and being hey, guess what? I don't need any money. You can just tip me to pay the radio show because there's no tax on tips. Guess what? Lots of jobs are going to move to tips. And I think they probably could, I think, in a way. And, how would you implement no tax on tips? Because what would prevent you?
You are so right. As you think about the granular implementation of these kind of policies. Okay, I don't know enough about restaurants to be positive about this, but it's my understanding that in most restaurants, they don't take the tips and they spread them around, and the people in the back of the house cooking your food get a share of that. Some restaurants do. At some, I know at the coffee bars, I think it's all shared, and, it depends. But let's say it's a traditional place where the cooks aren't getting the tip, the waiter's getting the tip, the server's getting the tip. How's that going to work out among those people in that place, right?
Yeah, and I think, obviously this is a Trump policy as well.
What a mistake.
But
I'm
I think, I have a lot of questions, and again, I am not an expert on the restaurant industry whatsoever, but I think tipping in general, I think in the past, especially, it's been done via cash. And so the understanding was it's going to be on them to report the cash. But I think probably a lot of it went unreported. And that's kind of the history of cash tips. And then I think whether or not you actually pay tax on your tips now is questionable. And then B, there are some people who kill it in the restaurant industry and make a lot. But there's a lot of people who are lower income that then on the income tax side, the deductions are so there's 40% of people don't pay any state income tax because their income's so low. Mm-hmm. And so I would suspect that many people in these jobs probably aren't paying income tax anyway, even if it's reported that it's just not being. So I'm what is the final number on that? I don't know.
But I think about, okay, let's say that you're a little shop owner in Columbia, Missouri, and you have a resale shop. You have a boutique that sells, I don't know, jewelry and perfume and stuff, whatever. Okay, how are you going to feel when you know that the people working next door at the restaurant aren't getting taxed on their revenue, but yet you're a little sole proprietor business owner, and every penny you have to claim? I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong with this.
Well, for back in the day, back when I worked on that side of the house, your servers generally work for a whole lot less than minimum wage and relied on the tips. And I think in the modern era, tip sharing is a pretty standard practice. The only real experience I ever had with it was tending bar, where we shared tips out of the tip jar, and the pooling, as they called it, went to everybody who was a customer facing employee, as I think the term that they use now for it. But, there's a little bit of a dichotomy there because people, servers and all, anybody's done that. No, they don't make a lot of dough, tips included.
I don't know. I guess if that's a problem in the industry where they're not getting paid enough, maybe they should unionize or do whatever it takes to get paid more at a base rate. I'm not sure. And there's the other issue of just integrity, John. I mean, you'd like to think that people are going to report their income. When people pay us in cash at our practice, we promptly go and deposit it in the bank as cash revenue because that's what you should do. I disagree with income taxes. I think we should have user taxes. But you don't have standing to gripe about taxes if you're not paying them, in my opinion, if you're trying to skirt
That's a
around
valid
it.
point, for
now,
sure.
Again, maybe I'm idealistic. Okay, I'll own that. But if that's the I mean, look, maybe we should just pay them more. Maybe just pay them more as a result of this kind of a discussion. I don't know where it's all going. All I know is that last night my wife made me a fantastic. Did you see what I posted? Did you see this
bragging
beautiful meal?
Again?
Well,
Did you
I
tip
saw.
her? Did you see this beautiful meal? And I don't have to tip her. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Geez.
It's just because she puts up with me and she continues to make these fabulous meals. So,
not to tell on you and burst your bubble.
What did
I saw the lovely Facebook post before you realized that you didn't attach a photo.
Instead of giving me credit for making the attempt.
Right. He'd cleaned his plate already, so there was nothing to photograph.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you see? I have a post. I have a post from a religious group called Harvest. That's it's my pinned post on my Facebook page, and it's basically about the wicked sins of people whose hearts are messed up. But that's another issue. For some reason, when I went back and posted the picture, I posted it on that. So then I had to erase that post. But anyway, it was a beautiful thing. So I had a very trying day. I got into a case in the OR in my outreach clinic, and I'm very thankful because we were able to help the lady. But at any rate, it took longer. It was just a long, trying, but fulfilling day. I get home, tired and getting ready for the show and getting excited about the things we're going to talk about. She makes this beautiful trout fillet with a lemon butter, but very little butter, mostly lemon, very little butter. She makes these wild grains. This was quinoa or some kind of wild grain. Puts very little chopped pecans in there with some jalapenos. So it's got a little kick. It's got the chewiness of the pecans. And then I know I'm eating.
I haven't had breakfast yet. I'm feeling hungry.
And then alongside that, my and Hannah's favorite, cauliflower steak. Yes.
Gross.
Roasted. Oh, no, but it's sweet. It's like dessert because it's sweet because it's caramelized,
Yeah.
Not caramelized, caramelized. And with some raisins and pine nuts on there. I said, honey, this is going to, I'm going to have to get a size bigger pants, go to Dillard's and shop. She says 729 calories. So if you eat that, I mean, it was a huge plate. I was full. So I said, I wonder what, standard fare is. So I looked up a Big Mac, fries, and a regular, high fructose drink, 1,200 and some odd calories.
Wow.
10 fried chicken wings, 1,100 and some odd calories. And so you can eat healthy. It can taste wonderful. It's not hard. She didn't spend all night cooking it. It was beautiful. We need to start moving that way. It's good for your cholesterol, good for your genes, good for your heart, good for your brain. You don't like my description?
But every once in a while, you just want a Big Mac.
Now, this is
Or
from a
some
guy who,
chicken
when
wings.
she was out of town, as a treat, I tried the $5 meal at the bargain meal at McDonald's, right? Because once in a while,
of the year.
Pumpkin spice season.
No.
Dang it.
Election litigation season.
Oh, boring.
I was waiting for
Even
it.
spicier.
I was waiting for it.
Come on. So the lawsuits are already flying over the initiative petitions and fair ballot language. That started yesterday. And so I will not be able to comment on some of that going forward, but just know that that window's opened. Of course, there's a short timeline. I think the ballot, there's a last day for which the judge can change the ballot. That's about, I think, 8 weeks back before the election. And so that has opened. So you are, we saw some articles drop yesterday on that, both the Osage casino one, and then there was a separate lawsuit filed by proponents, abortion proponents, over the secretary's fair ballot language yesterday.
What is the fair ballot language? What's the dispute?
It's different. Well, the secretary gets to draft the fair ballot language. I think the only place that the fair ballot language is actually really posted, I think it's published in the newspaper, but it's also posted in the polling place.
Mm-hmm.
That's different than the summary statement and the fiscal note, which is the fiscal note's the part that they ruled bad in the police bill, and that's what appears on the ballot is not the fair ballot language. It's the summary statement and the fiscal note. Or the fiscal note summary.
You see why some of us have a problem with big government?
No.
That
Of course I do.
What is that? What's that all about? Why can't we just make it simple so everyday Joes and Janes can understand it? Fair ballot language, fiscal note, blah blah blah.
Well, that's what it's trying to do. They have a 100-word limited summary of what's in the measure, and then there's, I think, the fiscal note summary is even shorter. Is it 50 words? But just like, they're trying to tell you, what are you voting on? Because it's assuming that you're not probably going to go read the multiple page measures.
Why can't
yourself?
there be one that does both?
Well, I would encourage everyone to go to sos.mo.gov. You can read the summary statement, the fair ballot language. You can read the fiscal note summary. You can go to the auditor's website, read the fiscal note. So yeah, get on the website and do your own research.
Yeah.
And don't rely on someone else's
good idea.
recounting of what's on there.
So, but it's being challenged because they think he's being too anti-abortion, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any surprise? No. I knew they'd challenge that.
Yeah.
All right, John, what do you got?
We got some texts solicited from our hour-long ago discussion of white elephants on Amazon Prime. Firefighter Al said, 12-pack of wrapped-up Busch Light. The handle was punched out. You could see a can of beer through it. The guy who won opened it up. Turned out to be an 11-pack of Diet Mountain Dew with one Busch opened under